People often say that true love only reveals itself in the darkest moments. But how far would someone be willing to go to find out who's really by their side? Ethan Carter, a young millionaire, decided to pretend he was confined to a wheelchair to test the woman who swore she loved him. What happened next shocked everyone. This is a story that will make you feel outraged, moved, and, in the end, reflect on what truly matters. The golden lights of the mansion reflected in Ethan Carter's eyes as he knelt in front of Vanessa Morgan. The diamond sparkled between his fingers, but it was his exposed heart that weighed the most in that instant. The silence broke with a whisper, "Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears, and the answer came quickly, almost automatically. "Yes, of course, I will." But behind the smile, there was something no one seemed to notice except his father. Richard Carter watched from a distance, his face shadowed with suspicion. The champagne toast echoed through the hall, but his steady gaze on Vanessa betrayed his doubts. "Is it love, or just interest?" he muttered to himself, not hiding his bitterness. The guest's joy clashed with the silence weighing inside the patriarch, and that heavy look would soon become an even greater burden for them all. As the night went on, while Ethan dreamed of living a passionate love story, Richard was quietly making plans. The patriarch's shadow hung over the scene like an unavoidable omen. He believed no sudden promise of love could withstand the test of truth. "I need to know who she really is," he thought, and his heart was already shaping a cruel test. In her room, Vanessa held the ring up to the mirror, her eyes shining more for the luxury than for the promise. The reflection showed a radiant young woman, but also an ambitious one. Richard watched through a crack in the door, as if capturing a hidden truth. The contrast between the sparkle of the stone and the coldness in her eyes was impossible to ignore, and in that moment, his doubts grew even stronger. Days later, Richard called Ethan into his office. The room, filled with books and family portraits, seemed to weigh heavily on the air. "Son, true love shows itself in the worst moments, not the best," his father said firmly. Ethan reacted with indignation, but the idea of a test had already been planted. The fate of everyone was beginning to be drawn under the shadow of that suspicion. The phone rang at the Morgan mansion in the middle of the night. On the other end, an urgent voice announced that Ethan had been in a serious accident. The world seemed to collapse in seconds, and Vanessa rushed to the hospital with tears streaming down her face. The cold lights of the emergency room reflected in her desperate eyes. The sound of gurneys and the sharp smell of antiseptic made the suffocating atmosphere even heavier. In the waiting room, she trembled as she held the engagement ring like it was her last anchor. "Please, God, don't take him away from me," she whispered through sobs. The hours dragged on like days, and every door that opened made her hold her breath. Her fragility seemed real, as if all her love was laid bare right there. But the test had only just begun. When the doctor finally appeared, his grave tone made the air feel even heavier. "Ethan survived, but he may never walk again." The news struck Vanessa like an invisible blade. Her sobs turned into silence, and in the depths of her eyes, a doubt began to grow. Paralyzed forever? Despair slowly gave way to the fear of a life she had never imagined for herself. Hours later, in the room lit by artificial lamps, Vanessa approached the bed. Ethan lay still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, playing out his pain. She held his hand tenderly, but her mind was already racing with questions. "Can I handle this? Is it really worth it?" The tears streaming down her face weren't only from compassion, they carried uncertainty too. The kiss she placed on his forehead was sweet, but fleeting, as if it carried a hidden weight. Ethan's heart ached as he noticed the subtle distance growing in her gaze. The quiet hospital seemed to hold secrets larger than its corridors could bear, and the future of that dramatic love story was about to take an even crueler turn. Back at the Morgan family home, silence filled the air when Vanessa returned from the hospital. Her dress, still marked by tears, betrayed a night of anguish. Sitting at the table, she broke down to her mother, her voice trembling between sobs. "He may never walk again. I don't know if I can live like this." The glimmer in her eyes clashed with her mother's cold, calculated expression. Mrs. Morgan lifted her chin, studying her daughter like a chess piece. "You don't need to tie yourself to a broken man," she said firmly. The words cut like a blade, sharp and merciless. Vanessa, desperate for comfort, found only strategy. That advice wasn't born of compassion, but of convenience. And the poison had already begun to work. It was then that her mother suggested an even crueler plan. "Let Emily take care of him. She's always been good at serving. This is the perfect chance." Emily, the half-sister treated like a servant, suddenly appeared in the conversation as a convenient replacement. Vanessa hesitated, biting her lip in conflict. But her mother's relentless gaze pushed her toward a decision she could never take back. Vanessa took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and for the first time, her sobs gave way to a bitter smile. "Maybe you're right, Mother. Maybe that's for the best." Her heart wavered between love and fear, but ambition spoke louder. Ethan's fate, unknown to him, was being decided at that table, among crystal glasses and poisoned advice. The clock struck midnight when Vanessa finally lay down. The engagement ring rested on the dresser, forgotten. Her eyes closed under the weight of doubt, while her mother watched through the half-open door, satisfied. The plan was already in motion, and Emily was about to be dragged into a role that would forever change the course of that story of love and betrayal. The hospital room smelled of alcohol and silence when Emily walked in, carrying a pitcher of water in her hands. Her steps were hesitant, but her steady gaze revealed compassion. Unlike Vanessa, there was no luxury in her presence, only simplicity and genuine care. She adjusted Ethan's pillows and whispered, "You're going to be all right, I promise." The promise echoed louder than any rehearsed words. Ethan watched closely, trying to hide his emotions. There was something different in the way Emily looked at him, as if she could see beyond the wheelchair. There was no pity, no sense of duty, only humanity. Every gesture carried patience, and that made the memory of Vanessa's abandonment hurt even more. His broken heart began to warm in the face of that unexpected tenderness. The nights were long, but Emily stayed by his side. She held his hand when the pain grew unbearable, read books softly to fill the silence, and even smiled to ease the heaviness of the room. Ethan, unable to move, felt a knot form in his throat. Why would she do all this for me? He wondered, though he never dared to ask. Day by day, the distance between Vanessa's betrayal and Emily's loyalty grew clearer. One morning, as she adjusted the blanket, Emily's eyes betrayed a flicker of exhaustion. Her hands were sore, yet she never complained. Ethan noticed and murmured, "You don't have to sacrifice so much." Emily answered only with a gentle smile, "Someone has to be here." The simplicity of that phrase resonated like an undeniable truth. With every moment, the contrast deepened. The emptiness Vanessa left was slowly being filled with Emily's unexpected care. The hospital had become the stage for a silent transformation, where a forbidden romance seemed to rise from the ashes of pain. But it was still too early to know where those feelings might lead. Destiny was only beginning to write its next line. Rain tapped against the window when Emily, exhausted, sat by Ethan's side. Her eyes carried secrets that had been buried for years. The silence was heavy, until she took a deep breath and murmured, "I need to tell you something." Ethan turned his head, alert, as if he sensed that her words would change everything. His heart raced at the confession that was about to unfold. Emily spoke in a soft but steady voice. She told him how she had always been rejected by her own mother, treated like a servant in her own home. She revealed the humiliations, the hidden tears, and the dreams that had been crushed. "Even so, I never stopped loving people, even when they didn't love me back." Ethan felt a knot in his chest, every word piercing through the wall he had built against the world. His eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan couldn't hide his emotion. "Emily, no one should ever have gone through that." His sincerity met her courage, forming an invisible bond between them. The hospital room, once cold, now seemed warmed by a delicate flame, and without realizing it, the two were drawing closer to something that went beyond compassion. Emily lowered her gaze, embarrassed. but she didn't remain silent. I have nothing to give except who I am, but I still believe that true love exists, even if it's never meant for me. Her words hung in the air like a prayer. Ethan squeezed her hand, feeling the truth pulse through it. That simple gesture meant more than any empty promise. In that moment, Ethan realized that true love didn't hide in rehearsed words or polished appearances. It was found in silent acts, in unseen sacrifices, in kindness without reward. Emily, scarred by rejection, revealed what Vanessa had never shown: character. But it was still too soon for this truth to be exposed to everyone. For now, he would keep it locked within his heart. Richard Carter decided it was time for the final test. The visit to the Morgan household was arranged quietly, without Vanessa knowing the true reason. Ethan arrived in his wheelchair, carrying nothing but the weight of doubt. The grand gates opened to reveal a cold house, where luxury seemed to mask darker secrets. The air itself smelled of challenge and disdain. Vanessa came down the stairs slowly, her expression surprised to see Ethan there. "You came all the way here?" she asked without enthusiasm. He lifted his head and, with a steady voice, declared, "I came because I still believe in our love, and I want to know if you believe too." The room filled with silence, even the servant stopping to listen. The test was underway, harsher than ever. Vanessa's mother folded her arms, watching from a distance with a sarcastic smile. She whispered in her daughter's ear, "Remember what we talked about. Don't tie yourself to him." Vanessa took a deep breath, her cold eyes fixed on Ethan. "I don't want this life. I won't chain myself to a broken man." Her words dropped like stones, shattering whatever hope remained. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to hold on to his dignity, yet his eyes betrayed the pain tearing him apart inside. "I understand, Vanessa. That's all I needed to know." His voice was firm, but his heart bled in silence. The heavy stillness of the room carried her contempt, and yet within his gaze, a spark of resolve began to ignite. As he left the house, the night felt colder than ever. The mansion lights dimmed behind him, as if closing the curtain on a bitter chapter. Richard, walking beside his son, said nothing, but his eyes confirmed it. The truth was revealed. The love Vanessa had denied was about to be reborn somewhere else in a way neither of them expected. The Carter mansion's garden was lit only by the soft glow of the moon. Ethan waited in silence, his heart racing, as Emily approached with hesitant steps. She didn't know what to expect, but her eyes searched his face for answers. In his hands, Ethan held a small velvet box, and inside it gleamed an unexpected promise. The cold wind carried the tension of that night. With trembling hands, Ethan opened the box in front of her. "Emily, I want you to be my wife." The words hung in the air, filled with emotion and sincerity. Emily brought her hand to her mouth, stunned, her eyes brimming with tears. "But why me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The world seemed to pause, waiting for the answer that would follow. Ethan looked at her firmly, still seated in his wheelchair. "Because you showed me what true love really is. Because you stayed when everyone else walked away. And because I can't imagine my life without you." Emily's heart raced, and tears streamed down her face. The scene was simple, yet greater than any wealth. From a distance, hidden behind the curtain, Vanessa watched with her mother. The two laughed silently, mocking. "She has no idea what she's getting herself into. She'll become a prisoner to a crippled man," Mrs. Morgan whispered. Vanessa agreed with a bitter smile, never realizing that such a pure gesture would reveal far more than her eyes could see. Still in shock, Emily finally answered, "Yes, Ethan, I accept. With all my heart." Her voice broke, but the strength of her feeling was undeniable. Ethan smiled for the first time in what felt like forever, as the ring slid onto her finger. The moon bore witness to the beginning of a new promise, and destiny held a revelation that would change everything. Their honeymoon began on a secluded beach, where the sound of the waves blended with the whisper of the wind. Emily walked across the veranda, admiring the golden horizon, when she noticed Ethan standing behind her. The wheelchair was parked in the corner of the room, untouched. A strange silence filled the air, as if something was about to be revealed. Suddenly, Ethan rose slowly, steady, supporting his own weight. Emily gasped, her hand clutching her chest. "Ethan, you can walk?" Her voice trembled between shock and disbelief. He took a few steps toward her, his eyes locked on hers, as if carrying a confession he had hidden for far too long. Her heart pounded as she struggled to understand. "I was never paralyzed," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It was all a test. I needed to know who would truly stay by my side." Emily stepped back, her face wet with tears. "You lied to me all this time?" The pain in her voice echoed like thunder, tearing through the night silence. Trust seemed shattered. Ethan moved closer, gripping her hands firmly. "I know I was wrong, but you were the only one who showed me what real love is. Without you, I would never have discovered who I truly am." Emily trembled, torn between anger and compassion. The shock of the revelation was deep, but it carried a meaning too powerful to ignore. Emily closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The sea roared in the background, as if witnessing the scene itself. Slowly, she opened her eyes again and let out a fragile smile. "I don't love you for what you have. I love you for who you are." Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace, and in that instant, the lie transformed into truth. But destiny still held echoes of the past, waiting to haunt them. The news spread like wildfire. Vanessa received the confirmation from Rachel Cooper, her closest friend. "He's fine and married to Emily." The words struck her chest like a blow, leaving her breathless. The wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, echoing the sound of her own heart breaking. In a desperate attempt, Vanessa rushed to the Carter mansion. Her elegant dress contrasted with her anguished expression, marked by regret that had come too late. When she saw Ethan and Emily together in the garden, her body froze. "Ethan, I was wrong, but I still love you. Give me another chance." Her voice trembled, but her eyes carried the plea of someone who had already lost everything. Ethan remained silent for a few seconds that felt eternal. Then, with steady resolve, he answered, "True love doesn't walk away when things get hard." His words cut like a blade, but they were fair. Vanessa felt the weight of the same rejection she had once inflicted on him. Now, the mirror of fate made her taste her own pain. Emily stood tall by Ethan's side. Her eyes met Vanessa's steady, yet filled with dignity. "You humiliated me, treated me as nothing, but I don't hold hatred in my heart. I just know this isn't where you belong." Vanessa turned away, her face burning with shame. Her defeat wasn't only losing Ethan, it was the revelation of who she truly was. Vanessa fled, her heels echoing against the marble floor. Each step reminded her of the life she had lost by her own choice. Outside, the night felt darker, the cold wind stripping away the last trace of her pride. Ethan and Emily exchanged a silent glance, certain that chapter was closed, though destiny still held one final lesson. Back at the Morgan household, silence filled the room as Vanessa collapsed in tears before her mother. "Because of you, I lost everything," she cried, her voice broken by grief. Mrs. Morgan, as cold as ever, lifted her chin. "You only followed the path you chose. I simply showed you the truth." But her words, sharp and icy, pierced an already shattered heart. Vanessa's father, silent until then, rose from his armchair. His stern gaze reflected deep disappointment. "You threw away your chance at happiness. You chose to listen to bad counsel instead of your own heart." His voice echoed through the house like a sentence. Vanessa lowered her head, unable to face the truth. The weight of her choices bore down on her like an unavoidable condemnation. Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, was blooming in unexpected ways. Emily walked through the garden, her hands resting gently over her stomach. The news of her pregnancy had arrived like a gift, bringing hope after so many tears. From a distance, Ethan watched her with a soft smile, fully aware that he had found the kind of love that endures everything. The past was no longer a shadow, but a lesson. The home once marked by suspicion was now filled with gentle laughter and the sound of new life growing. Emily transformed every corner of the house into a refuge of love, proving that true feelings are not born from appearances, but from sincere gestures. At her side, Ethan knew this was his greatest treasure. The empire he had inherited seemed small compared to what he had truly gained. And so, a story marked by betrayal, tears, and redemption left behind a clear lesson. True love is proven through actions, not words. Vanessa was left with the emptiness of her choices. Ethan and Emily, with the fullness of a life built on truth. And in the background, the inevitable sense that kindness always triumphs, even when it seems fragile against trials. In the end, this story shows that real love is not measured by words or appearances, but by actions that endure pain and hardship. Emily proved that kindness always wins, while Vanessa discovered that blind ambition leads only to loss. And have you ever stopped to think about who would truly stay by your side if everything fell apart? Share in the comments the person who would never abandon you. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to follow more emotional stories like this one.